Oh, hi. My name's David Lawrie. Welcome to the Scarlet View. How's your day going? Mine, not so good. I got zombies trying to eat me over here, and I got saviours trying to shoot me over there. So I figured today would be a good opportunity to teach you how to grade like The Walking Dead. So you can take your shots from looking like this to looking like this. Oh, and by the way, if you're wondering about the sound design in this episode, we're going to cover that as well in a future episode. Keep an eye out for that. But right now, I gotta go. Roll title card. Right, before we begin, we're going to take a look at the camera setup that we used to shoot that sequence. So, The Walking Dead is filmed on Arriflex 416 16mm cameras, and obviously we don't have one of those. So we filmed on a very different setup, but to prove that we can get that look in post through Resolve through the grade. So the camera that we've used is the Panasonic AU EVA1, filming in 4K UHD at 23.976 frames a second. We're going into the Shogun Inferno in ProRes HQ. On the front of the camera, we've got the Canon 24-105 L series lens, and on front of that, we've got a Tiffin 1/4 black Pro Mist filter. Now, everything was shot using this setup, except for one shot, which was a wide establishing shot, which I used the Canon EFS 10-22 with that Pro Mist on the front. So, nice, simple setup. Now, let's head over into Resolve and start on the grade. Right, so here we have a shot of Dave looking rather saviourish in the woods here. Now, it's not the most exciting shot in the world. It's basically a static shot, but it's to give you an idea of how the elements for the Walking Dead look are actually built. Coincidentally, and a bit of good fortune, wearing this shirt is very similar to the kind of production design in terms of wardrobe that they actually have in The Walking Dead. So I thought this would be a good place to start. Now, if you watch The Walking Dead, you may have noticed that it's gone through a series of different looks as the show's actually kind of progressed over the years. Some more on the blue side, some more on the green side, and this most recent series has been actually quite warm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a look that is the kind of the idea of the style of that Walking Dead look, because it has changed over the series. So we're not going to use a reference, we're not going to use screen caps or video. We're actually going to build it from the ground up, because that's a lot more interesting than just going node by node and trying to match scopes. If you wanted to match it exactly, by all means, when you're at home, do it with a reference and match it using the scopes. But what I'm going to do is build that kind of typical classic Walking Dead look and just do it as I go along by eye. So I felt that would be more interesting. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to balance this shot. So let's bring up the scopes here. We're looking pretty good on the white balance and exposure. Now, the left side of Dave's face is a little hot. It is a little bit overexposed by a touch. Not too bad though. And as you can see, with that Tiffin Black Pro Mist filter, softening it out, it is blooming the highlights a bit. And for my eye, I think that they do use a filter like that on The Walking Dead, at least on some of the shots. So I've just recently got one and thought this would be a good opportunity to try it out. So hence it's on there. So let's get this balanced out. So first of all, we're going to bring the lift down in the shadows. We need to add some contrast into this image, so bring the mids down a little bit, because The Walking Dead is actually it's not too harsh on the highlights. It is quite a flat look to it. It's very graded, it's very contrasty, but it's quite light in the highlights. So we want to make sure that we are kind of getting that right. So the log, we want to obviously put some detail into his face. We want that detail to be in there. If you can see around this area here, we don't want to flatten that out too much, because we do want there to be contours in his face. Now, as we go along, that will be highlighted by the grade, but we can come back and then address that a little later on as we go along step by step. So I'm going to bring the overall look down. It's quite a muted look. That's the word I was looking for. It has quite a muted look, albeit quite heavily stylized. So as a starting point, in terms of the basic side of the levels, that's pretty good. We're going to put some contrast into it. We've gone a little bit farther, so we're going to bring that bottom end up a little bit. And with this high end as well, I'm keeping an eye on his face. We're going to bring the pivot point up a little bit. Like that. Maybe a little more contrast. That's not looking too bad at all. And then we're going to put some saturation in. Now when you add the saturation in at this stage, it's going to show you the real impact of what you've done, of how it's actually affecting the grade. And we're not looking too bad there. Let's have the saturation at 75, just as a balanced image. As you can see, we are coming out quite hot in his face, but we are still looking pretty good there. So that's not a bad starting point. So for the next node, we are going to do the skin tone. So we're going to do node, serial node, and then node, add layer node. And this bottom layer is going to be for the skin tone. So let's see what kind of selection we can get. We do want the lips in there. Widen that out a little bit. Now I don't want to get too much of the tree in. The problem with shooting in the woods is it's very close to Caucasian skin tone. And if you start affecting the skin tone, the overall kind of look of the skin tone, it's going to bleed over into the trees. And actually, if you watch The Walking Dead, you can see where that's happened. So it's not too bad if we get a little bit in, but what we don't want to do is have all the tree in there matching the skin tone, because it just won't look natural. We want it to look stylized, but we don't want it to look unnatural. So if we can bring maybe a little bit more shadow in there, blur it out, move the center across, maybe we can lose a bit more. That's not too shabby. And then we're going to come into the mid-tone in the primaries wheels, and let's take this off so we can see it happening, and then we're just going to warm him up a bit. Now the other thing about The Walking Dead is they have very kind of orangey, quite saturated skin. As you can see, we are getting some in the tree there, but it's not a problem because that will be addressed in the coming stages. So we've got Dave there looking very, very suntanned. There's quite a big difference from where he was. So that's where his original skin tone was, and that's where we are now. Now, this is not going to stay like this. We are going to key this down a little bit, but what I like to do with my skin tones is push them further than perhaps I should, and then dial it down, because we're going to affect the background. So now we're really going to see that skin tone come out. So in the layer above, in node 2, we are going to come into the lift on the primaries wheel, and we're going to pull it over to the right and bring some blue into the shadow. And then in the mid-tones, we are going to push more towards yellowy green. And then we're going to, in the highlights, just a little touch of yellow. And then we're going to bring the saturation down quite a bit. Now, as you can see, he's really starting to not look good because of that skin tone. But as I said, we are going to adjust that. So I'm just going to bring a little bit more of blue into the shadows and push these a little bit further like that. Now we're going to go back into the skin tone layer, node, sorry, and bring the gain down in the keying. And you can really see that that's making a big difference. He's actually starting to look like a normal human being again, albeit with quite a glowing complexion, because that is very much the Walking Dead way. So we're looking pretty good. And the next serial node, what we're going to do is we're going to add a film stock, and we're going to see how this affects the skin tone as well. See, it just takes the edge off a bit, which is good. And we're going to choose a camera profile. Now, if you saw my last tutorial on grading underwater footage, you'll see that I use some odd camera profiles for my film stocks, just because it works for me. So that's brought that out looking quite nice. And we're going to go in and use the Fuji AST 100 film stock. We're going to remove the grain for now, and then we're going to back this down probably to about 50. That's try 65. Okay, and we're going to make some changes now within this. So we are going to bring the saturation up a little bit, and we're going to come back into this node, and we're going to bring more blue and a bit more green, just kind of offsetting it a little bit in here. Now, as we can see, we're starting to look really good in terms of the forest with that Walking Dead look, but Dave's not looking so good. He's looking very orange because obviously we've affected everything around him. So we're going to bring the saturation down in that skin tone node. That's looking pretty nice. He's still got that orangey skin tone that they have in the Walking Dead, but I'm going to back that off a little bit more actually. But he's looking more part of the scene now, and that is the key thing with skin tone, is that they look, the subject that you're looking at looks a part of the scene, but actually does stand out. So that's looking pretty good from now. So the next node we're going to do is a desaturation of the shadows and a desaturation of the highlights. And we're also going to come in now. Let's have a look and see how much noise there is in this shot. We've been pushing this grade quite a bit, and there really isn't much noise in this at all. It's looking really, really quite good. What we are going to do in the whole image is we're going to come back into this first node, and we're going to add some mid-tone detail. The Walking Dead is quite sharp looking. It's got that kind of harsh edge to it, which is what we want as well. So 37.5, so we're going to add some mid-tone detail in there. Well, probably that's a little bit too much. Let's that mid-tone detail in. Now we've desaturated the shadows and we've desaturated the highlights, and what we want to do now is put some film grain on there. So we're going to come in, film convert, bring it up. We're just going to leave the default profile. Make sure that the film color is on 0, otherwise you're going to be adding a film stock to the film stock you've already added. And we're going to go in and add some grain. Now, the Walking Dead is shot on 16mm camera, or Super 16. So let's see how it looks with Super 16. It flattens it out a lot, as you can see. So you lose a lot of resolution. You get the grain of 16mm in there, but you also get the loss of resolution. So we're going to come in and use the the 35mm Academy, and we're going to put that down to about 65. So if we take that off, it's there. And we're going to take one final look at that. I think the skin tone is a little bit yellow. So let's push it a bit more towards red. magenta. And that, to me, looks pretty good. Now, it's not going to be exactly like The Walking Dead because we've built it from the ground up, but that is looking pretty close for me. So here we have the ungraded image, the flat vlog image, and here we have the Walking Dead look. So there you have it, how to grade like The Walking Dead. Remember to keep an eye out for the sound design episode, which is going to be coming soon, and let me know what you think. Leave a comment below with any questions, anything like that. Remember to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and I'll see you again next week.